Mic's on. Hey, welcome back to the channel. Today we're talking about the Fujifilm XS10 once again. This camera is one of my favorite cameras I've used in the last how long of testing cameras. But today specifically, we're going to answer the question why I think that this camera is possibly the best camera to buy for content creation online. So let's get into it. So the question that I get asked so regularly all the time is, Charlie, hey, what camera should I buy? 9 times out of 10, it's like, what camera should I buy for Instagram and blah, blah, blah. But a lot of the times it's what camera should I buy for starting a YouTube channel and stuff like that. And I think this camera, the Fuji XS10, fits the bill perfectly for that question that I get. So if you are asking that question to me and you've sent it to me and you're wondering why you never got a reply, it's because I get that question so many times. But hopefully this video should answer your question finally. Now, this isn't really a full in-depth review, but it is kind of a review of the camera. We'll talk about everything that I really loved about the camera and why I think this camera is super dope for content creation. So let's just get straight into it. So my first pro point for this camera is the price. So the body alone is $899 if you was just to buy the body. Of course, if you're stepping into the world of Fujifilm, you're going to need lenses. But if you're already in the world of Fujifilm, you maybe got some cameras you take photos with and stuff like that, and you're just looking for a camera that's super dope at video. I mean, this camera's dope at photos as well, don't get me wrong, but today we'll be talking about video. If you're looking for a camera like that, then $899 isn't a massive chunk of money for what you get. But if you are stepping into the world of Fujifilm and you want to buy the kit, there's kind of 3 kits you can get. You can get the 18-55, which is like the old school kit lens. You can get the new school kit lens, which is a 16-80mm, and you can kind of get the cheapest way into the system, which is their XC 15-45mm lens. So I'm going to suggest these two, right? Just because it's one end of the spectrum to the other end of the spectrum. So as a kit, you can buy the camera with the original kit lens, which is probably the idealist one to buy, the 16-80 for I've got my notes here by the way, for £1,350, right? Now bearing in mind that lens is super dope. It's one of those lenses you'll hang on to for a very long time. So if you can't stretch the budget to go to 1,350, there is a lighter option in. I think for about £950, you can get this camera with the plastic XC 15-45 kit lens, which is the lens I'm actually using right now on my Fujifilm X-H1. And I love this lens. I think for video, this lens is super perfect, but I wouldn't really trust this lens for photography. But for video, it's so dope. So wide at 15mm, so cool. All right, so that's my first point, right? It's not an expensive camera to get into a new system. So if you're switching over from Canon or you're switching over from Sony, you'll know full well when you first start in those camera brands, you accumulate a lot, it takes a lot, but if you trade that stuff in, it's not going to take everything out of your pocket. Under £1,000 or just over £1,000 mark, and you're in the system. Okay, so the next point I want to come across is the form factor and the use of this camera. This camera is in such a small package. It looks like a little miniaturized X-H1, and I love the Fujifilm X-H1. It is my personal favorite Fujifilm camera, and I felt like I just took everything from the X-H1 and shrunk it into this little body. It's just so nice. I mean, it's not weather sealed like the other cameras, but at this price, I mean, to get weather sealed in this price is just incredible. That'd be way too much to ask for. But the camera is nice. It's just so like, it feels solid. It doesn't feel cheap or plastic like a lot of other camera brands at this kind of price range. It feels nice. It feels solid. It's got a nice texture to it. I'll show some B-roll as I'm talking here and we'll go over the top. But yeah, as you know, so the camera's got a flip out screen, which I think is possibly the most important thing needed in cameras these days to push them towards content creators. I mean, to be able to do what I'm doing right now, looking at you guys through the camera, I'm just staring at a lens, right? I have no idea what's going on on the screen right now because I've set everything to auto and I'm just trusting the camera. I don't know if it's going up and down in light. I don't know if my focus is in and out. I have no idea, and it's scary. But when you have a flip out screen, it just solves it. It makes things feel so much easier. Like the whole week that I was using the XS10, there was such like a less stress when I was just walking around filming, doing this. It just felt so good just to be able to look over to the right, see what's happening. Oh, okay, I'm off. And I can just change it. I mean, it's so good. And I think moving forward, Fujifilm putting this on their cameras is such a smart move. So if you are making an XH2 and, you know, just think about having a flip out screen, you know, I'll buy it straight away. And yeah, talking about how small this camera is, I think it only weighs in at about 465 grams, if my memory serves me right, which is like, I can't even explain how lightweight that is, but you can do the math, you can get a scale out. It's just super lightweight. I think that's probably half the weight of what my XH1 is without a lens and stuff like that on there. And somehow, I don't know how they've done it, small form factor, small camera body, and still has an IBIS in it, which is better than the IBIS on my XH1. Fujifilm just keeps stepping it up. The IBIS is so good. Let's just talk about that for a little bit, actually. The IBIS is so good. I was walking around with it and I didn't realize that I even had IBIS switched on. It was just like so smooth and I just took it for granted. There's me just thinking, I got that perfect ninja walk, you know what I mean? But no, it's not me, it's the camera. It was just so good. And I realized as well, I didn't get to use it, but I realized when I went into the settings, there was a IBIS plus digital stabilization. I wish I had time to thoroughly test that. I think I did do one scene actually, but I'm not sure how that came out. But I think that'll be a super awesome thing. I'm guessing it crops in when it does that. But this is my other point. The camera is so small. It's lightweight. It's got a flip out screen. It's got IBIS. I mean, it's under £1,000 for the camera body. This is mind blowing stuff. And then it moves on to the whole usability of this camera. The customization in this camera, like all Fujifilm cameras, is top notch. But this camera, I feel like they stepped it up on purpose because I feel like this camera is pushed towards maybe new users going into the Fujifilm system. Because if you're a Fujifilm user already, you'll know that we will normally have all of, you know, our buttons on top, our dials, so we know where we're going straight away. Whereas this camera, it kind of feels a bit more like when I'm using other brands. I mean, there's a lot of preset buttons on there. The left one moves, I think, the film simulations and things like that. But the great thing about this, you can customize nearly every single dial and button on this camera, which I thought was super dope. For instance, myself, when I was using the camera, I changed there's a button right next to EVF, and I changed that one to playback. So yeah, I don't like the fact that I have to look away from the camera, then move my finger across to the other side to press the playback button. That's not really my kind of way of shooting. I mean, I know you could hold the camera differently and then press it like that, but I feel like there's too much hand movement. I hope you're getting what I'm saying, right? I just like the fact that I'm holding the camera to my face and I can just reach over to where my EVF is right here. The button's right to the right of it. I can click the playback. I can see what's going on straight through the EVF. Okay, the shot was great, shot was bad. Hit the shutter, take again. And I think that's just so good. Well, it's a minor little thing, but it just means that you can create a lot more fast, a lot more efficiently, and I really like that about this particular little camera. But I mean, there's so many different functionality buttons you can change on there, which is super dope. There is now a actual dedicated red record button, which I kind of find a little bit confusing. I'm guessing in any mode whatsoever you can hit the red record button and it'll start shooting video, which makes sense, right? It's like similar to other camera brands, they do the same thing. But it's a bit weird when you're in the movie mode yourself. I've gotten so used to now pressing the shutter button to start a record. So I also changed the red record button. I changed that to high frames per second. So when I click that, it'd switch over to 240 frames per second and film in that, rather than record a normal video, if you know what I mean. So that's the beauty of this camera. You can change any button you can near enough see. Super dope. So, all right, since we're talking about video, let's continue talking about the video quality of this camera. A lot of you guys will be questioning that in the first place. It's weird nowadays. We get these cameras which are supposed to be photographic beasts, but all anyone ever cares about nowadays is what's the video like on it, blah, blah, blah. It's just crazy how everything's become a hybrid world right now. But anyway, let's not talk about society. The video in this thing is super dope. I was so shocked. I'm going to say hands down, by far, it has the best 1080p video I've ever used in any camera, full stop. Now, obviously I haven't used Arri Alexas and Reds, but I'm talking, you know, these hybrid cameras that we use, photographic cameras that can do video. I've never used a 1080p file that looks so good. Like, it's crazy. Like, okay, for instance, right now I'm shooting 4K on the XH1, right? I did a talking headpiece on the XS10 in 1080p, and it's so weird how it looks like a 4K image. Now I'm guessing it must be getting downsampled from 4K, but this looks like it's getting downsampled from 6K to a 1080p. It's just so crisp. It's so nice, and it's so sharp. It's so sharp that you have to even turn the sharpening down, but it's not about sharpness. It's kind of like it's like a detail kind of thing. It's hard to explain. It's just really nice. It's really rich. And I think it has something to do with the fact that you can shoot 1080p in 200 megabits per second, which is just unheard of. I mean, a lot of other camera brands are doing 100 megabits per second in 4K. So to have that in 1080p is just mind-blowing. And the 4K is exceptional, but I mean, for me, I don't know why, I was just blown away with how good the 1080p looks. It's just so good, and the file size is so small. The 4K, I know for a fact, is downsampled from a 6K image, which is what gives you that super beautiful resolution. And this camera is, for video, it's absolutely phenomenal. Slow motion 120p is absolutely incredible. Once again, the best 120p I've ever seen in any camera. I did a side-by-side little test for myself on my XH1, and I did it on the XS10, and I was just like completely confused. My XH1 just looks so soft and blurry, whereas I was thinking the 120p looked pretty great out of this camera. It wasn't until I put it side by side with the XS10 how weird and soft it looked. The XS10 still looked like a 4K image. It was just so crisp and so nice. And I'm guessing once you put that onto YouTube, it looked like you shot the whole thing in 4K. It's incredible. The video quality is incredible. I'm not going too far here. I'm being serious. The video quality is incredible. Where it does suffer though, it does do 240 frames per second. That's obviously super dope, but it starts to look a bit soft. It starts to look more so like a 720 kind of, you know, it's got that soft kind of thing. I'll show some examples obviously on the screen. It doesn't look as good as the 120, but the fact that we now have 240 frames in these cameras is just... So the video in this camera is super nice. I think 4K is not cropped. I'm not sure, but it felt like when I was shooting 4K, I didn't feel a difference between when I was switching between 1080p and 4K. I didn't feel like it was cropping in suddenly like my XH1 does. It just felt the same. So there might be a crop, but I didn't feel it. So I'm guessing it's a small crop if there is one, but I'm not too sure on that. Really, I should have done some research before I even spoke about that. But now we've got FLog built into this camera for, I mean, sub £1,000 camera. It's got FLog built in there. It's got some new film simulations. I didn't get time to test a new one. I can't remember what it's called, but I didn't get time to test the new ones. But obviously you've got the beautiful Fujifilm colors in there. You've now got FLog, and it's just a beast of a camera for working with for video. Babies are crying. I think you can output 10-bit as well through the HDMI, so it's just crazy. If you're running like a Ninja, Atmos Ninja or anything like that with it, this camera just becomes pretty much a little cinematic beast, which is dope. And one thing you may or may not know about Fujifilm cameras is they follow the whole 180 rule. Now, you've probably heard this loads of times from YouTubers. You have to focus on the 180 rule. If you break it, things don't look great. Well, you can be helped out inside camera with Fujifilm cameras. They have the correct shutter speeds to adhere to the 180 degrees rule. You know what I mean? They have 1/48 for 24 frames per second, etc, etc, etc. And another added bonus as well, you can now use the XS10 as a webcam. So, I mean, what can't this camera do, right? It's just crazy. So the last thing I want to talk about when it comes to video on this camera is the autofocus. It is super dope. Once again, by far, I think it's the best Fujifilm I've ever done. I mean, yeah, we've got the X-T4, which is super, super dope, but this is running the same mechanics internally as the X-T4, as the X-T3, and you can feel it straight away. It's so good. I did a few tests out on the beach with various different lenses just to see how they all cope and how the camera copes with the whole AF system, and it just tracks beautifully. I'll show you some of that example right now. but you'll see me walking towards the camera's locking onto my face, even locking onto my eye in 4K. Now remember, a lot of cameras in 4K can't focus on the eye, especially some cameras can't even focus on the face nowadays even, which is crazy. But this camera locked on and it was so smooth. There's no more like weird jittery focusing that used to happen on older cameras and older lenses. It's just so smooth. And yeah, this camera meshed together with the 16 to 80 kit lens is just a phenomenal movie making beast. So then finally, let's not leave out the fact that you can do photography. Now I didn't really want to talk about photography too much in this video because I want to make this video more so about how to use, or not how to, why I think this camera is possibly the best camera for content creation, i.e. YouTube and Instagram and stuff like that. So if you are shooting for Instagram, you need to have photo quality that's bang on. Now remember, the internals of this camera is the same as the X-T3, as the X-T4. It's the same new sensor. So you're getting that 26 megapixels of just pure beauty. The camera, the images coming out of this camera are very, very, very nice. So it's not one of those cameras where it's better at one thing than the other. This camera is really balanced. Like the photography is top notch. The videography is top notch also. It's a very, very balanced camera and I love that. I'll show you some images that I got with the 16 to 80. I got some actually images of different lenses and stuff like that, but I'll show you some images. I mean, what can you say? They're sharp, they're beautiful. They're just a beauty to work with. The raw files in this camera are just, you know, it's Fujifilm, so just crazy. You can bring back the highlights, you can bring back the shadows. It's just a super nice, robust codec to deal with. So then, I hope I answered the question. Charlie, what's the best camera for me to get if I'm just starting out on YouTube? Charlie, what's the best camera to get for Instagram? My answer right now, 2021, is the Fujifilm XS10. Trust me, this is the camera you want to be using, especially if you're going into the Fujifilm system, the whole lineup, and you're just starting out. Trust me, start out on this one. You'll feel comfortable. You'll feel happy. Like, it's a bit of a learning curve to get used to Fujifilm cameras. It's kind of a step way back in a different direction, right? Because that's the first thing I noticed. When I came from Sony to Fujifilm, I noticed straight away, I was like, yo, am I using an actual film camera? I feel like, yeah, is this digital? Is it not digital? What's going on here? You know what I mean? It just felt like I was learning a craft that I didn't grow up with personally. I didn't grow up using film cameras and stuff like that. So for me, it was like learning. I mean, we know all these things. We're photographers, so we know what they are, what they do, but just having to move them physically, and then take a shot, then move them physically, then take another shot. And it just felt like a step backwards in a good way. It felt so nice. And yeah, that's the whole thing about Fujifilm, stepping into that. Whereas the XS10, you still kind of get that feel, but it's a bit of a gentle drop into the deep end, if you know what I mean. And I think it'll really help you guys if you are switching over into the Fujifilm system. You've been seeing the colors, you've been seeing the picture quality, the imagery, and you want to get involved. Trust me, the XS10 is the easiest way to fall into the Fujifilm world. So then, I hope you enjoyed this video and it answered all your questions about Fujifilm cameras, and in particular this Fujifilm XS10. If you've been on the fence thinking, do I buy this camera? Do I not buy this camera? Is it worth it? Is it not worth it? I hope this video helped you guys make a decision, either or either or whatever, you know, tomatoes. If you did like it, leave a like, subscribe if you haven't already, and leave some comments below, man. Let's get to know each other. I want to know what you guys are shooting, what you guys are shooting with, and let's just talk. I try to talk to everybody that comments to me in the comments. If you can take the time out, I can take the time out. All right then, catch you in whichever video happens to come next. Peace and love. Oh, I want to go get myself an Earl Grey. Oh yeah.